Thank you for your interest in the School of Social Work here at UNC Charlotte. I'm Dr. Ticola Ross. I'm the Field Education Director, and I'm happy to talk with you today about field education. Let's get started. So, what is field education? It's really what we call our pedagogy, and essentially, it's our method for teaching students social work. So, in field education, students are able to successfully socialize into our profession. You're working every day with real clients and with social workers. You learn how to perform the role of the social work practitioner. How do I manage this case? How do I advocate for clients at this meeting? How do I work in communities? You're also able to make the connection between what's learned in the classroom. Okay, I know about systems theory, I know about Piaget, but what does it really look like in the field? How does it make a connection? And so you're able to make those connections through field education. About the field education structure. We have three different programs, and I'll walk you through each. The first is our advanced standing 1 year program. These students are in the field 16 hours per week, and that's typically a Monday or a Tuesday, but there is some flexibility within the day that you go to field or attend field. It's a 1 year program, so students are in field every week for 16 hours in the fall and the spring, and just like that, they're done. For our second year, full time students in field 16 hours per week. Again, it's that typical Monday, Tuesday with some flexibility if needed. But since it's a 2 year program, for the first year, they're in field for the fall and the spring semester. And that's just one total year at one internship. And then their second year, students typically choose a second internship at a different location to do their fall and spring semesters to learn more about social work. Then we have our 3 year program, which also revolves around a 16-hour per week program, and their days are really flexible. We find that a lot of folks in our 3 year program are working, and so they may need more flexibility in terms of what days they go to field. We can support that, but it is important to note that weekend placements are limited, and so think about that in terms of what works best for your schedule. We are accredited by the Council on Social Work Education, or CSWE. And so expectation is that we are turning out competent social workers in these 9 areas. And so we work very hard to make sure that occurs. The first is competency number one. We absolutely want to make sure that our social workers are ethical and always displaying professional behavior. So we talk about that in class, in field. Competency number two, we want to make sure that they are aware of diversity and difference in practice. Competency three, advancing human rights and social, economic, and environmental justice. Competency four, you need to have that research in there. So engaging in informed research and research informed practice. Also, a social worker a lot about policy. So we're making sure that our social workers are engaging in policy. Competency number six, and you'll find that 6 through 9 really reflect a lot of the same areas, but they're just done differently. So with competency six, you have engaging with individuals, families, groups, organizations, and but also we don't want you to just engage. We want to make sure that you're assessing, intervening, and evaluating with all of these different areas of social work. So, in terms of the different areas in social work, we have quite a bit of areas that we are partnered with in different organizations just a bit. But if you have an interest in school social work, substance use, corrections, global work, administrative social work, developmental disabilities, social services, we have a wide range of areas that you're able to connect in from a social work perspective. So, next, agencies that we're partnered with that I want to tell you about, but we are partnered with well over 200 different agencies within the Charlotte area, and we're really reaching beyond that. So those are just some areas where you're able to get some experience or some of our key organizations. So you may be thinking, well, what can I do with these organizations? So for foundation year or first year students, there's a lot of work that can be done with assessing needs. What does my client need here? Are they homeless? How are they going to get to school? Crisis intervention is another one. They're about to get their lights turned out. How can we support that? They're having a mental health breakdown. How do we support them around that? Psychosocial assessments, trying to figure out what our clients need and how to best support them. There's a lot of advocacy that happens, making sure that our clients have access to affordable health care, access to good education, access to a lot of different areas. And then case management. How do we move them forward in a systematic way? At the advanced year is you see you'll do a lot of the similar information, a lot of the similar pieces related to that, but also what's added are the clinical services. So in the first year, you're really getting that foundation of what does it mean to be a social worker? How do I advocate for others? How do I support others? And then if you have an interest in the clinical perspective in your second year in the MSW program, it's more likely that you'll have exposure to sit and talk with folks or work with groups and talk through some of the more clinical diagnoses related to anxiety, depression, bipolar, and so on. So, what's the field placement process? It is an intensive process, but I am here to walk you through each. So, I really recommend that you start doing some research now. But once you're admitted into the program, I'll work with you on this process in terms of figuring out your areas of interest. In the first year, we typically do place students sometimes in areas that aren't their interest areas, just to help you expand and understand what it is to be a social worker. But also, you may have an interest in a particular area and didn't know it until you try it out. So, in the first year, we work with you to get a placement that's really focused on just learning social work skills. There is an interview process that happens prior to the beginning of the school year. This can be done virtually or this can be done in person, depending on safety. Next, you submit what's called a field agreement. It's agreement between you and the agency that outlines I'll be there Monday, Tuesday from 8 to 5, 16 hours per week. So, whatever the arrangement you have with the field instructor or the agency, you fill that out. Then we move into what's called clinical compliance. These are things such as drug screen, criminal background checks, TB, immunizations. Every agency has different requirements. So you won't have this information until we know where you're placed. And again, we're here to walk you through what's required and what specific deadlines. And then my favorite part, after everything's submitted, da da da, you get to be cleared and start field education. So that's just a quick rundown of the process. But it can take typically a few months for this process to actually happen. But we're here to support you all the way through. So, in addition to field education being actually in the field, and as I mentioned, we do have a concurrent model means that you're in field while you're also taking classes. However, we also offer a field education seminar course, and I really love it because it's a place for us to really support you in a different way that's outside of the field. So, of course, everything is linked back to, as I mentioned, CSWE. We want to make sure that you're meeting those 9 core standards, but also it's a place for you to process some and develop as a social worker with other classmates. So, this course will also cover professionalism, self care, intersectionality, diversity and cultural issues, safety, and a whole lot more. So I'm excited to talk with you more about seminar field education. Lastly, I'd like to briefly talk about employment-based field education. So some students are currently working in agencies that have social workers on site, or they do some type of social work activities there. And so you may be in a space where you can do employment-based field education. This would be possible if it's approved by the field education office. This typically just looks like a conversation between you and I where we talk about what possibilities there are for you to learn social work skills at your agency. You have to be working with the agency for at least 90 days. We want to make sure that's a pretty stable location for you and you feel safe and comfortable. And then the other key piece is that your internship responsibilities and supervisor must be different than your work responsibilities and supervisor. The best example I can give is a partnership that we have with DSS. So let's say there's someone who's working with the Department of Social Services and they're currently placed in adult services for their everyday job with a supervisor named Bob. Okay, so they're doing that usual job. They've now joined our program and say, "Hey, I'm wondering if I could do an employment-based internship." Well, absolutely. We would have conversations with the agency and see if there would be a place for the student to be able to work. So instead of the student working in adult services, their internship could possibly be in youth and family services, which is a different division with a different supervisor, let's say by the name of Susan, right? So that would satisfy the requirements for employment based. So again, your work responsibilities need to look very different than your internship responsibilities. And again, if you have further questions, I'm happy to talk more with you about it. So I just want to thank you for spending just a couple of minutes with me exploring more about field education here at UNC Charlotte in the School of Social Work. I'm questions. If you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out at ssw-field at uncc.edu. Again, I'm Dr. Ticola Ross, and I'm happy to talk with you about School of Social Work and field education. Bye bye.